This is CNN Breaking News.
Good evening, everyone. You're watching CNN's special live coverage of breaking news. In fact, stunning news, even for President Trump, who has been known to shock people. President Trump fired FBI Director James Comey just hours ago. First, the official version of what happened, according to the White House, is that fundamentally this was done based on the recommendation of Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein. Rosenstein was just confirmed by the Senate 94-6 at the end of April. He is in charge of the investigation into Russian interference in the U.S. election because Attorney General Jeff Sessions was not forthcoming about his meetings with the Russian ambassador and recused himself. So Rosenstein came into the job. He looked at Comey's behavior relating to the Hillary Clinton email investigation last year, according to this account. He found it wrong. He found it deeply troubling, and he recommended that since Comey has refused to admit his errors, he should be fired. Rosenstein recommended that to Jeff Sessions, the Attorney General, who passed it on to President Trump. End of story, according to the White House. And here are the problems, according to those who are skeptical of this decision and this president. First, President Trump shares exactly zero of Rosenstein's concerns about allegedly how unfair Comey was to Hillary Clinton. In fact, the only problem that President Trump has ever had about Comey's behavior relating to Hillary Clinton was that he did not charge her with a crime. And President Trump, then Citizen Trump, clearly loved it when Comey essentially reopened the Clinton case late in the campaign. It's as if we're expected to have all been blinded by that flashy memory eraser thing from Men in Black. And we wouldn't remember all the times that Trump expressed concern that Comey didn't charge Hillary and then praised him for raising questions about her last October and afterwards.
I respect the fact that Director Comey was able to come back after what he did.
It took guts for Director Comey to make the move that he made in light of the kind of opposition he had where they're trying to protect her from criminal prosecution.
He's become more famous than me.
Then, of course, let us not forget the additional context that the FBI is in the middle of investigating whether anyone in the Trump campaign orbit had anything to do with the Russian government attempts to interfere in the U.S. elections last year. In fact, Director Comey's firing comes a day after potentially embarrassing testimony for the White House about the Russia investigation from the then acting Attorney General Sally Yates. Yates, of course, also fired by President Trump just days after warning the White House that she thought then National Security Advisor Michael Flynn had been compromised by Russia, though the official reason for the Yates firing was her refusal to implement the travel ban. On Capitol Hill this evening, concern and alarm, and that's from Republicans. Tweeted Senator Jeff Flake, Republican of Arizona, quote, "I've spent the last several hours trying to find an acceptable rationale for the timing of Comey's firing. I just can't do it," unquote. Senator John McCain, in his statement, called the firing disappointing and said, quote, "The president's decision to remove the FBI director only confirms the need and the urgency for a special congressional committee to investigate Russia's interference in the 2016 election." The chairman of the Senate Intelligence Committee, Richard Burr of North Carolina, quote, "I am troubled by the timing and reasoning of Director Comey's termination." And one editorial note coming in from Yorba Linda, California, with the Nixon Library, objecting to anyone on social media or the media calling this evening's action Nixonian. Fun fact, the library tweeted, President Nixon never fired the director of the FBI, hashtag not Nixonian. Joining me now on the phone, Democratic Congressman Joaquin Castro of Texas. He's on the House Intelligence Committee. Congressman, first of all, what is your reaction to the firing?
I agree with you that it was a stunning development. I certainly didn't have any advance notice, as I know many others didn't. And it's also a very suspicious action by the president after this FBI director just about 5 or 6 weeks ago talked about how there may be Trump associates who may have conspired with the Russians who interfered with our 2016 election. So the whole thing was very strange.
So let me play devil's advocate here. The Trump White House is saying that this was all predicated on this letter from Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, in which he says Comey's handling of the Clinton email server was wrong and that it undermined public and congressional trust. Do you disagree with anything that Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein wrote in that letter?
Well, certainly many of us on both sides of the aisle have had issues with Director Comey's actions, and everybody's been clear about that. But as I said a few months ago, in January, I believe, that I trusted Jim Comey to be more independent than anyone that Donald Trump might appoint as FBI director. And it's also suspicious that, as you mentioned in the opening of your segment, President Trump actually complimented Jim Comey after he took the actions that he did with regard to Hillary Clinton, and so did Jeff Sessions. So to come back now and lay that out as your main reason for his firing seems very odd.
Well, President Trump this evening tweeted something about Chuck Schumer, the Senate Democratic leader, noting that Schumer had said, and you have not said this, but Schumer had said a few months ago that he had lost confidence in James Comey. Crying Chuck Schumer stated recently, this is the tweet, "I do not have confidence in him, James Comey, any longer, then acts so indignant." Hashtag drain the swamp. So I guess there are Republicans out there, especially in the White House, who are confused that Democrats who didn't seem to like what James Comey did would object to his firing this evening.
And no doubt there will be political finger pointing back and forth. But the fact is the American people deserve an answer to the question whether any Americans coordinated or conspired with the Russians who interfered with the 2016 election. And aside from the Democrat and Republican politics, we have to get to the bottom of that. And this is a big boulder or obstruction in the road to getting that done.
Let me just ask you point blank, do you believe the White House account that this happened because Deputy Attorney General Rosenstein, who only took office a few weeks ago, came in, examined what Comey did during the Hillary Clinton email server investigation, concluded that he did not have the confidence of the agency, did not have the confidence of the Congress, and had to go, told that to Sessions, who then told that to the president, and that's what happened? Do you believe that?
No, I don't. They laid no foundation for any of this. And as you mentioned, it happens within a few weeks of when this gentleman takes office. That's not how you go about laying the predicate with the intelligence committees, with Congress, for firing an FBI director when it's only happened once before.
Congressman Joaquin Castro, Democrat of Texas, thank you so much. Appreciate it, sir.
Thank you.
The letter that I'm referring to from Rod Rosenstein was released earlier this evening. It was written today. Let's talk more about all of this with Democratic Senator Ed Markey of Massachusetts. Senator, you said after the firing that this is reminiscent of Watergate, and we are, quote, careening closer to a constitutional crisis. How are we careening towards a constitutional crisis? Senator Markey, are you there?
Yes, I am here. I am here, yes.
How are we careening towards a constitutional crisis, as you said in a statement earlier tonight?
Well, there are very few moments when our democracy has been more fragile than it is at this moment. What the president did is an insult to our Constitution, and we have to ensure now that the Congress exercises the role of checks and balance to ensure that a president cannot fire the person conducting an investigation of that president. And that is after President Trump himself called the investigation a taxpayer-funded charade and a hoax. So we know that this is, in many ways, a cover-up. It's an obstruction of justice, and it is something that ultimately could turn into Russiagate, because that was the subject of the investigation that Jim Comey was, in fact, probing this White House and the campaign that Donald Trump ran to win the job.
But Senator, you call it a cover-up. Do you know that for a fact, or you just suspect that? I mean, a lot of Democrats had a lot of issues with James Comey. Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, voiced a lot of those concerns. Frankly, the letter could have been written by you. And then apparently, and maybe you don't believe this, but apparently Rosenstein submitted the recommendation to Attorney General Sessions, who then told President Trump, and President Trump said, okay, if he doesn't have the confidence of the agency or the Congress, then I will seek his resignation. I mean, do you have evidence that that did not happen?
Well, if the reasons outlined by the Department of Justice are really true, then why fire James Comey now and not months ago? And why not wait until the Inspector General's report has been completed? I believe that this goes right to the heart of this compromise of our election by the Russians and the subpoenas which were being issued by James Comey and the FBI of General Flynn, of General Flynn's associates, of others who were being probed because of their connections to the Russians during the campaign and after the campaign, and otherwise, this actually makes no sense. This is something I think that has happened because this investigation is getting too close to the Oval Office.
But just to be clear, that's your suspicion. You don't have evidence of it.
Well, I think that's the question that we should be asking in the wake of this episode, because otherwise it really does not make any sense.
Let me read to you from the letter to Comey from President Trump. He wrote in an odd second paragraph of the letter, quote, "While I appreciate you informing me on 3 separate occasions that I am not under investigation, I nevertheless concur with the judgment of the Department of Justice that you are not able to effectively lead the Bureau," unquote. Here is, just for our viewers to remind them, here is what former FBI Director Comey said fewer than 2 months ago. Take a listen.
I have been authorized by the Department of Justice to confirm that the FBI, as part of our counterintelligence mission, is investigating the Russian government's efforts to interfere in the 2016 presidential election. And that includes investigating the nature of any links between individuals associated with the Trump campaign and the Russian government, and whether there was any coordination between the campaign and Russia's efforts.
So that's what Comey said at that hearing in March. And then, of course, this letter today from President Trump to James Comey, firing him, saying that Comey had informed him on 3 separate occasions he is not under investigation. What do you make of that?
I think that, first of all, that was an extremely curious way to fire someone by leaving the impression that Comey had cleared him and his White House and his campaign of any wrongdoing, any relationship that was inappropriate with the Russian government, because I do not think that there have been any conclusions that can be reached with finality with regard to that subject. There are subpoenas that are being issued right now to those who are related to General Flynn and his activities and others who are being investigated by the FBI. So what I think is that any comments that have been made up until now are still extremely preliminary. There is a House and a Senate investigation, but I think for this purpose, most importantly, an FBI investigation, and the person being investigated just fired the person conducting the investigation. And I think that as a result, in order to ensure that our democracy gets the answer to whether or not there was a compromise of our most sacred institution, free and fair elections, that there be a special prosecutor that now gathers all the facts and presents them to the American people, and then ultimately asks the question, what did the president know, and when did he know it? That now is the only way that we can proceed, given the fact that James Comey is now a modern-day Archibald Cox, who has been fired as the chief investigator of a sitting president of the United States.
Senator Ed Markey, Democrat of Massachusetts, thank you so much. Appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you.
I want to bring in my panel. Let me start, Jeff, with you. The White House said they lost confidence in Comey's ability to effectively lead the Bureau, and that new leadership is essential to, quote, restore public trust.